Welcome to The Fix,
the new way to get your copy reviewed by two former copy chiefs.
because whether you're an aspiring copywriter or you've been in the industry for decades,
The best way to improve your work isn't to read books, blog posts, or online guides.
is to see real writing, your writing, being reviewed and improved in front of your eyes.
And that's the goal of The Fix, to bring you inside a virtual writer's room
And watch along as we review, edit and rewrite real copy.
from real writers like you. So let's get straight into this week's episode. And remember, if you like what you see here,
Please share The Fix with anyone you think would find it valuable. It is completely free.
Hello and welcome to episode 6 of The Fix, where we take a piece of your copy sent in by you and try and fix it up. Look at where it's strong, look at where it's weak, look at where it can be improved, and try and tease out a few things that you can apply to your own copywriting, no matter what that field is, whether you're a writer or a small business owner or whatever it might be, a marketer, doesn't matter. So, Glenn, welcome to today's show. We're recording this slightly late because we're disorganized people, and Glenn's been writing his first film script. He just told me that he was told last night he has to write and today has to deliver. So it's going to be a real work of art.
Tarantino is a real slave driver. He just drops these things on you, and he's like, "I need some copy for my new film."
Yeah, he calls it copy. That's always the weird thing.
It's weird. It's really weird. Yeah.
Right, let's get stuck straight into a piece of copy. I'm going to share my screen with you. Right, Glenn, you can see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, okay, I will read it aloud and then we'll dig into it. So this is an extract from a much longer piece of copy. However, there's enough in this early section for us to talk about and try and improve. So the headline says, "Want to know why 90% of people fail to earn a living working from home? We'll show you the secret that will put you in the top 5% of newly self-taught marketers, virtually guaranteeing your success and providing you with huge earning potential in under 7 days." The body copy goes on. "The world is in turmoil. You know you need an extra income and added security from a job that can't be taken away from you or deny you money when you need it the most. You're not living in a cave. You're aware that many people are earning additional incomes online with social media and marketing, but you're not that technical and perhaps the training seems too complicated and very expensive. However, when you know how, it's actually really easy. Training can be very affordable and a lot of the time free. You can be up and running, earning a good living from social media in a very short time." Glenn, I think we could probably just get stuck into the headline, to be honest. I can bring it back up on screen, but I'm going to read it out one more time just so that you've got it in front of you. "Want to know why 90% of people fail to earn a living working from home? We'll show you the secret that will put you in the top 5% of newly self-taught marketers, virtually guaranteeing your success and providing you with a huge earning potential under 7 days." How do we strengthen that? Where's it strong? Where can it be stronger?
Well, yeah, it's a big one. It's a whopper. As soon as I saw this, I did two things. And so people know, because I always say I'm just going to look at this straight away as soon as you sent me this last night whilst I was in my car waiting for Ruth to come out of an appointment, and I had a quick look. Only a quick look to not cheat too much, but as soon as I opened it, I just went, "Oh, it's copy." And I have always thought this, and we'll look at how to improve it, but I think it's a really good lesson. A good friend of ours who's in Australia now, as though he's gone somewhere, but he's in Australia. We can't help him anymore. But yeah, he always used to say about one of the biggest problems with copywriting is that people write copy in inverted commas rather than telling a story, rather than saying what they should be saying and like intriguing people. And stuff that looks too much like copy will invariably not perform as well as stuff that isn't. That's not to say it won't perform and do well and what have you, but you can make it stronger. And as soon as I saw this, it looked too much like copy to me, that I would naturally, if I was a buyer, if I was a natural reader of this, I would just straight away just put up a small wall. Now it's not a wall I can't overcome, and I might be interested to read on, but it's just, you've got to be aware that when you put a long list of claims and statements like this, you're going to slightly put up that wall rather than immediately just like going, hey, come here, have a look at this. There's just a little bit of kind of the suspension of disbelief just gets questioned a little bit. So I would just say that point first. The second piece that kind of ties into that, but is slightly different, is that as I then read it, and I thought, okay, working from home, kind of biz up space. I worked a long time in the biz up space and very interested in it. The whole idea of talking about self-taught marketers, all this kind of stuff, it's certainly in my realm of interest. But I read it and I started to glaze slightly because the details, the specificity, and this is going to turn into an episode about specificity that I can't say the word specificity, which is very annoying because it's one of the 4 U's that we were always taught of being ultra specific, but we'll just push through. But the specifics here, though they seem specific, I don't think they really are. They don't really go to the details that I'm interested in. And what I'm, just give you an example, is when you 90%, top 5%, huge earning percentage, 7 days, it feels like it's specific. It feels like it's hitting the right notes. But actually, there's not much being revealed here. And this is, so straight away, I thought about that specificity. Again, it's put together well and it's good copy. But I think what we're trying to do is always trying to create great copy and really go the extra mile and really turn up the conversion on anything. So on a long headline like this, I think we could do a lot of work to understand that when you say 90% of people, it feels specific, but it's not actually really touching any emotions. It's not really intriguing. We'll show you the secret. I think this stuff is a little bit old hat, and I think you can do a little bit of work, and not much, and the copy is well written. It speaks to so many good copy elements, but it's just missing that extra kind of intrigue. I'm not intrigued by it. I'm straight away, as I say, because I've got that first reaction, which is I've just put my wall up and I'm kind of thinking this sounds a little bit unbelievable. There's a lot of detail, so 90%, top 5%, shouldn't that be 10% if it's opposite 90%? No, it's not, because it's an unrelated fact, but my brain's doing that work. There's just a lot of information there, and I'm not sure if I'm in. I've not been sold on the idea yet. So the classic, I've not been sold on the idea, because there is just that too much copy in it. That's my first reaction. I'm not sure how you felt.
Yeah, I mean, you know more about this field than I do. However, it's still copywriting, and I would echo the first point you made. When we just to kind of pad that point out, because it can sound a bit strange when it's like this is a show all about copy, and one of the criticisms we level at people is this sounds too much like copy, which is inherently strange, right? This sounds too much like copywriting. It's like, hang on, well, aren't you copywriters? Yes. So the way to think about that is the man down the pub that sounds like a salesman, an estate agent. I mean, in every pub, I was in the pub last week, there was 2 estate agents there. It was fucking unbearable. Do you know what I mean? Just, you could hear them out of the corner, and they talk in that way, and it's like jibber jabber. That's not how people talk. It's how you talk. That's what we mean by copy. It's slightly, I wouldn't say oily is the right word, but it's in that sort of vibe space. So when we talk about it being too much like copy, of course, it's a piece of sales copy. It's going to be copy, but we want it to feel and sound natural. It can be direct. It can have claims. It can have all those things, but it needs to be done in a slightly more natural way, exactly the way you would tell somebody down the pub. We used to call it in the Agora days, we call it the barstool test. So just imagine yourself telling somebody this in the pub. You would not say, want to know why 90% of people fail to earn a living working from it? You just wouldn't. What you probably would do is something like this. I mean, there's a lot going on in that headline complex, and we probably just need to figure out what the key bits are. it's probably, there's a secret that will put you in the top 5% of newly self-taught marketers and provides you with huge earning potential in under 7 days. I would say that's the promise. So let's say it's that. I would strike through virtually guaranteeing your success. A virtual guarantee means nothing to anybody. It's either a guarantee or it isn't. And if it's a guarantee, then say, I guarantee you will make this, and back that guarantee up. The fact is you probably can't. Very few products can actually make that guarantee, and therefore don't use the word because it's inherently weak. And want to know why 90% of people working from home fail to earn a living? That's a slightly different idea. We'll expand on that point in the second part of the show, I think. So let's hone in. There's a secret that puts you in the top 5%, newly self-taught marketers, provides you with huge earning potential. How do we make that more specific? Well,
secret.
Well, we probably by showing it somehow. We say this every week. How can we flip it around to a story? So if that said, I'm going to make this up, but 45-year-old Grimsby council worker finds way to make £91,000 from internet marketing, ... 7 days after he started. For instance, that's specific and story-led. Now, I also made it up, and that sounds like copy too, so it doesn't pass that first test, but it gets us into that realm of like, can you just point at somebody that would back this up? Because then that is specific, it is a story, and it naturally gets me over something of a hump. Just by the way, I wouldn't claim that you can make a ton of money in 7 days, unless you definitely can, in which case we'd all be doing it. It slightly sets you up for a fail. Do you know what I mean? So like maybe you could even lead with somebody who made a lot in their first year, and then later on in the sales piece actually say, hey, there's this other person that made a ton of money in the first 7 days. But that's an extraordinary case. So the promise actually gets bigger as the promotion gets on, rather than leading with the sort of biggest sounding yet easiest to punch through claim, and then having to wind back.
Yeah, I just interrupt you there, Nick, because you made a very good point about virtually guaranteeing, and I think it ties in with that huge earning potential in under 7 days. It feels like, you can in under 7 days you can get the potential to earn a lot of money because you've started on the journey or whatever, which is true in effect. But again, as you say, and virtually guaranteeing, it immediately sounds, it's guaranteed, but it's not. It's virtually guaranteed. And therefore, in the headline complex, you've straight away got two things where I'm fooled and I'm just on it. You might be lucky and get a lot of people like that. Probably not in the modern world, like where we've got a lot of cynicism built up to anything like this. But you've got it straight in the headline, two like road test, like black marks, where even if they keep going with you, they're just all the time thinking, what's going to be the payoff? How are you going to justify that? And then, as you say, as you go further in, you're like, oh, actually, it's the potential. Oh, actually, it's not guaranteed. It's virtually guaranteed. And it just, if it was guaranteed, or if it whatever the 7 days thing is, even if it is the potential within 7 days, save that. And then when you get a bit further into the copy, you can come around and say, and you know what? It's not like this is going to take you forever. We can get this on the road in 7 days. And then that gives that weight, rather than at the moment capping it at, putting a disclaimer in it, camping the idea of going, oh no, there's huge earning potential within 7 days. So it's just, how do you use those facts? Again, and virtually guaranteeing, as you say, it's either a guarantee or it's not. Try and get as accurate in your copy as you can. That is why my initial reaction was, this is too copified. This feels like copy. It's not what you're telling me. But anyway, go back to the secret bit, because I think
let's talk about that claim, huge earning potential in 7 days. Now, you were always a big proponent of the fact that don't make a big promise like that. Like, you'll make tons of money straight away. Actually, the magic can be, you could make sort of £40 this Sunday or whatever, small, make it feel like, wow, like that's believable. And perhaps that's the way forward. So if I was digging into that and trying to make it more specific, I'd be like, okay, 7 days sounds generic. Is there if it's an internet marketing system, which I don't know a lot about, is there a settlement day? Does it take 3 days for the money to clear your bank account, for instance? Maybe it's 3 days. So maybe it's and the first royalty check could hit your bank account 72 hours from now. Maybe because it's tied into a specific. Maybe all of the money is calculated on a Sunday evening, and you could get your first balance payment on whatever. Just, I would dig into that, and I'd say, how soon could you actually have this in your account? And when we started writing copy, we would still write about checks in the post. That's a bigger thing in the States now, since the government sent everybody money in the post, but kind of doesn't really happen here. Nobody gets a check in the mail, or the post as we call it. But a payment into your account or whatever it might be, that can still work. But make it specific, make it small, and make it feel like, oh, that does sound possible with the right technique, and then grow it from there. So I think that's how I would center that claim. If you want to make it a claim-based headline, I see no problem with it. Well, maybe there is a problem. We'll come to that.
You mentioned about the small amounts thing, and I'm afraid I can't remember who the marketer or presenter it was. I feel like I was in Las Vegas when I saw this presentation, which makes it sound weird. But I can remember someone doing a talk, and they explained their emotion. They were like running like a massive business, like PayPal size. They've become like this massive business. But they got really emotional and moved me to a certain extent, because they framed it all within getting that first sale for their business.
Yeah.
So, and this is what this is talking about in setting up your own business. If you're working from home, I've got friends who are like wondering about making the shift and stuff like this. I guarantee the first time you get a client on your own back who then pays you the money, and you go, oh, can I have this money? And they give you that first moment of being paid, that first earning will have far more emotional pull to yourself and to anyone than the time when you get invoiced for whatever each month and you run the business. And that's the same feeling. It's the small amounts. It's the thing. It's whether you're betting, it's like, oh, I've won my first bet. Like, that erases all of the bad bets because I've won one bet. Like, if you spend all this time setting up a business, and in fact, when you get that first sale, you're like, we are on the road. So it's speaking to that again. Huge earning potential in 7 days. It sounds specific, under 7 days, but actually, it's kind of meaningless, or it's undermined by all the things we've spoke about. But if you can say you could potentially earn your first sale by the end of next week, which is truly a potential thing that you could do, it just starts to make it about you more. It connects, and it's real. I've written unbelievable next to this headline, because even though all of it's probably technically achievable, it just feels unbelievable. I don't believe it at the moment, because it's just couched in the wrong way. It's not speaking to the reality that the writer here, and again, we criticize because we're looking to improve, but I think there's a lot of good copywriting here. The writing is excellent, and the feelings the writer's going for, they know to go to personal stuff. They know to speak to the reader, and you know where you are, and phrases like that. But they're missing the trick here, because they're not talking directly to the reader and not thinking about where that reader really is. Want to know why 90% of people fail to earn a living from home? No, not really. I don't care. If I'm trying to become someone who's working from home, I need to know what the answer is and how do I do this. I don't care about 90% of other people. I don't care why people are failing. It wants to be the positive thing. So I guess that's another argument for why you should go straight in, as you suggested, Nick, to that. We'll show you the secret, and that's where the real intrigue of this headline, this promo, seems to be for me.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, so I think we've talked about specificity, and I think one kind of takeaway from that is you can't just be a little bit specific, and you shouldn't just make something sound specific. It has to actually be specific for a reason. The world is a specific place. There are colors, facts, figures, locations, timeframes that are specific. So saying 7 days is non-specific, because why 7 days? But saying, figuring out when the settlement date is, or actually working that out in hours, or whatever, whatever the shortest time it could be, that's specific. You've got to push the specificity to the absolute sort of edge of the envelope, if you know what I mean. You can always bring it back a little bit, but don't make it sound specific without actually doing the digging. So that's one takeaway. I think the second bigger point is really, we call it the rule of one. However, all advertising in some way or another, every agency, every book will have the seed of this idea in there. The one big idea, if an idea, advert without a big idea is like a ship passing in the night, is the Ogilvy. Every sort of, well, that is advertising. One big thing. Say one thing clearly and see if that works on its own. Don't garland it with another idea, because it doesn't make it stronger, it makes it weaker. Slightly going on here. So if you want to do the real reason most people fail to make money online, do that. But do that. Just that emotion, that idea, and blow that up, onto a big canvas and talk to the person that's tried a million things and it's never worked. Okay, that's one idea. The stronger idea we think here is probably the promise-led one. We'll show you the secret to making money on the internet. We could have some extra uniqueness in there. Maybe there are ways of doing that, but that's a big idea in its own right. So do that. Mashing them together, to me, just it diffuses them. It doesn't strengthen them. So I think that's something that, I used to say to junior copywriters all the time about the rule, because by the way, the rule of one and being more specific is kind of what we say to everybody when they're learning, right? Just bashing them over and over the head the same things. And I used to say about the rule of one is, don't worry if that idea doesn't work, but give it a chance to work. Put it on its own 2 feet, put it out there. And if the reader doesn't respond to it, fine. Now they don't like that idea. But give that idea the chance, whatever that thing is, whether it's a crazy risk or something a bit safer. One idea, test it. Learn something, move on to the next thing. You cannot learn that on an idea level if you chuck something else in there. So you've got to take a risk there. And at the end of it, if it doesn't work, you say, well, at least we tested that. At least we know it doesn't work, rather than which part of it didn't work. So I think that's really what we're getting at here. And you could take a couple of ideas out of this, but that tends to be a bit of an issue. What is your one big idea? And I talk about this all the time with writers. If you don't know what your big idea, if you're struggling, don't write any copy, write a note to yourself in 20 words or less. What is your big idea? And if you can't do it, you don't know what it is yet. And that's the problem with your copy. You haven't figured it out in your own brain yet. And that's probably, what would it be here? It's a lot of things. Let's just put that copy back up on screen and we'll talk over it. How many different ideas do we have in that headline? Doesn't mean they're bad ideas. Doesn't mean they're wrong, but there's a lot, isn't there? There's at least, there's 4. And we're trying to get that down to 1. I know that there are headlines. I mean, Glenn, you've written some long headlines in your time. I'm not really that sort of writer because it doesn't really fit in our world as much. But you can do it like that. But even if it's long, it should still be about one thing.
Sure. I mean, even the first line of "The world is in turmoil," that's an idea in itself. And I think like the thing you mentioned there, and it's very insightful, Nick, about like you've got to make that one idea. Again, it's okay, fine. We keep saying that and people go, but it's really hard to actually have that discipline to commit to one idea and explore it. I'm always very aware of giving practical advice, and we've sat in the trenches, both me and you, Nick, are jobbing copywriters. We do this today. We do it every day. We still do this stuff. And I know what it's like when you've got a business on your back, trying to get the copy done. You haven't got all the time in the world to be super creative and do all this stuff. So you need to be quick. And then what your conscience maybe, or something inside you is saying, oh, but I need to do a big idea. The thing is, what I would argue is, if you can't immediately get that big idea, there is the whole practical thing of like, actually, if you spent half an hour actually trying to figure it out, you'll probably spend less time writing it than if you spent 3 hours trying to write without the idea. There is a kind of, that is true. But also, if you do that work and you realize that the idea you've isn't good, if it hasn't, I always used to say this about something having legs. Has it got the legs to carry you through it? It's with all writing. It's with writing a novel, with writing a thing, with anything. Has that idea got legs? Does it actually kind of run out at short story stage? Does it actually run out after you've written a page copy and you can't go any further with it? That might not be a big idea then. That doesn't mean you've like wasted your time. That can come in later on. It might be a little subhead and a little sidebar, or like a little anecdote or something that you can use. None of this is wasted, and we're not just saying, "Oh, get rid of that." Like, do you want to know why if you don't use that 9% of people thing, you might have that later on within your bigger idea that you can use and practically come back to. So it's not a case of like writing off all these things. What Nick's saying is like, you need to give the one idea enough space and to see, has it got legs? Can you write about that? If you can't get excited about that, you shouldn't be leading the copy with it. That's the point, because it is 80-20 or whatever the thing is. If people don't read your headline, if people don't read like the top bit, they ain't reading the rest of it. So you need to lead with the strongest idea. And if you can't write a lot on the idea, it's probably not a strong idea. So there's obviously so many angles to this, but it's why it gets repeated so often about the idea of a big idea, of something you can talk about. But it doesn't necessarily need to even be big. I think that's where
one. Yeah, I think we should split them out, because bigness and oneness aren't the same thing. We want both, but at a minimum, we want one idea, and any writer can figure that out very quickly. Is it one thing? Okay, is it a big thing? Is a subjective. Whereas I don't think the oneness is as subjective. It's quite obvious.
Where Neo just flies into the room and we all realise we're in the Matrix. It's
true. I mean, we constantly, within the, I work for a lot of Agora businesses, and a big idea, we could do a whole show on that. I think we should, because it's kind of the simultaneously the most cliche-ridden and yet important part of copywriting in that style. But oneness, one idea, that's true of everything, of every advert, every great advert, whether it's a direct response ad that goes on for 50 million pages, or whether it's just a little short thing on the radio or YouTube or whatever. It's going to have one clear, compelling idea, well executed, so that bang, that it gets into the reader's mind. It might not work, but at least it's one thing, and most good advertising will be built around that. In fact, I would argue all. So the specificity, really ratchet that up a notch and get as deep and as specific and detailed as you can. There's one idea, pick it and commit to it. A kind of little corollary point to that is just to take this piece of copy, a little pointer I would suggest is, we'll show you the secret that will put you in the top 5% of newly taught marketers. Okay, so there's two people in this headline, okay? Or in that part, there's you and the top 5% of newly taught marketers. I don't know whether or not anybody has a strong enough emotional connection to newly taught marketers to want to even be in the top 5%. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like, well, if you're going to put a comparison in there, if you want to be one of those people that really makes money online, is really what you're saying, right? I would just be careful with that. If you're going to put other people into the headline, I need to have a clear sense of who they are and ideally an emotional connection to them. If not that, then why are they in there? Do you know what I mean? It's like, there's kind of a bit of a waste of time. Newly self-taught marketers. Is that a community we spend a lot of time thinking about? The newly self-taught marketers. There's a lot of different levels to it. I'd just be careful with that. So I think those three things, there's different levels to them all, but hone in on one thing, get really specific about it, and then maybe try and show it in a slightly more compelling way. Although, I mean, you don't have to point at an example of somebody making millions of pounds. I mean, that's been done a million times. So maybe just talking, as the writer does, directly and openly to the reader, using you a lot, maybe that can be made to work. I mean, if people are interested in this sort of thing, then that sort of pitch will work. But yeah, let's get one big idea in there, or one clear idea in there. Sorry, the cliche just jumps out your mouth, doesn't it? The one big idea thing. One clear idea, let that be your thing. If it doesn't work, try something else.
You're right. So, I mean, we've got a slightly disclaimer bit on this one, which leads on from that, I think, because as soon as I saw this, as I say, I had that reaction to it, that it wasn't quite specific enough and it wasn't getting the detail. And I'll link it in the sense that I feel like when we talk about specificity, we can't not mention the old kind of gun thing where it's like when you want to talk about being specific, you might say he was shot by someone, but what was the gun? Just mentioning a gun isn't enough. It needs to be the actual gun, like a Smith & Wesson or a PP.6 or PK.47. I'm not that familiar with guns, but whatever, you need to get really, really specific. So how do you do that? You go to the product or the reader, and you keep asking questions why. You keep asking why, and do the copywriting work, the real work of copywriting, doing your research and getting those details. This writer, when submitting this work, was made the point that they weren't fully sure about whether they were bought into the idea about this particular product, which was ironic because I looked at the copy first, thought, to me, this is showing that you're not fully in on the thing. You're not pulling out what's really interesting and intriguing about that product. So to answer that, and that the writer was asking about that as an idea about how do you deal with that situation, and it just shows that when you're not fully committed to the idea, it's very difficult to find those specificity points, to find those little points of intrigue. So it reminded me, like last week, I was out of time meeting a client about a new project they wanted me to work on, and I'd agreed to do it because I liked the person, but I didn't fully know exactly what the project was about. And so I was kind of going into it blind. But then the day before a meeting, I read all the stuff and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. So I was immediately, my interest was piqued in the product. Went and met the person, spoke about it. I came home like some kind of brand ambassador for the thing, explaining it to Ruth, talking about it, really excited. I've been literally the past few days starting to reference that product or the product idea, shall I say, and took it on. I was amazed by it. It was wonderful. And immediately I was excited because I thought, right, well, without even trying now, I know the copy I will write will be a percentage better than what I would have done if I'd not been interested in the product. I write for products I'm not always fully convinced, not fully convinced of, not fully excited about. I think there's a good thing, but like maybe an element of the product I need to do some work on. And I'm like, well, this is a bit obvious, this is a bit thing, but for whatever business purpose, you need to do the work. But when you're excited, when you do the research and invested in the product, it will come out naturally. So it kind of, the writer asking about, oh, should I write copy that I'm not fully interested in, what have you, and not engaged in? The answer I would say is, and we'll get a bit philosophical here, Nick, I'm not sure what you will think about it, but I would say try not to. But then the real part of me says you need to get paid and you need to earn money and you need to become get to the point where you can pick and choose jobs. So you do need to do it. But what I would do is always, before you start writing a copy, before you fully agree to write copy, you need to figure out, A, if you are excited, and if you're not, why not? What about that product or service would excite you? And keep trying to find it. It might still be there. You might just not be on the surface of finding what's interesting and exciting about it. So it just shows that you've not done enough research yet. And that might sound harsh, and I apologize if that's the case to people thinking, oh, I'm not interested. It might still be with you. You just need to find why this is interesting and find what the interesting element it is. But
you've got to sell yourself is really what, like,
you've got to sell yourself.
Research is perhaps a loaded way of putting it. If you're not sold yet, you need to keep digging. That's really what you're saying. You need to keep researching until you find the thing that sells you. And if you can't find that thing, like I agree with you. This could descend into, let's face it, we've both been doing this a long time and can say no to lots of projects if we don't want to work on them. Not everybody is in that situation. So this all comes with that disclaimer that if you need the money, I mean, I would still argue you shouldn't sell something you don't believe should be sold to other people. You have to find the way that you can do it. And I think integrity as a copywriter is important. You know, there are plenty of copywriters with zero integrity out there. There are, unfortunately. They'll sell anything, they'll say anything to get the sale. Well, fine. I don't know if you can do that for 50 years and maintain good relationships with clients and have a strong standing of
mental health.
I don't know if you can. So, I mean, I've worked on things. I would say just don't sell a crap product. If you have doubts about the product, not saying that I do about this one. I don't know anything about it. But if you were to have doubts about a product, and you cannot overcome them, try not to sell it. Try to do something else. There's a middle ground. You know, I will work on products and with publishers where I know I might say to them, look, another copywriter might make you the big promise, the big claim, you can make tons of money from this, you can do X, Y, Z. And I always just say, look, if that's what you want, go and work with a different copywriter. There are plenty of people out there who will do that a lot better than I can or will. Because that's not my style of copywriting. I like to think I'm good at other things, but that's not my thing. And that's a way of diffusing it, saying, if you want me to do it my way, this is what that would look like, and here's how I would do it, and here's why I think it would work. So perhaps with something like this, you talk about, if you're thinking that maybe I have doubts about, you know, whether or not we could fulfill this promise, then talk about why people fail a lot. You know, maybe you can talk more authentically about that and then get in. So maybe there's a way of rebadging it, you know, you can talk more authentically about that personally. It's going to be a better sales pitch. But I think that is important. And I'm always a bit put off by if I work with anybody who will say anything. So editors in our world, it is, you know, somebody who's created a product. I want them to care about their own reputation and integrity. I don't want them to say, hey, you write anything you want, I'll put my name to it. I think, oh, right. Well, your name's not worth anything then, is it? Why would I want to work with you? I want to work with somebody who cares about their reputation, who's built it up slowly over time, is well respected in their field. So I've got to be really careful with that, because if I can work with that well, it's going to power up my whole message. I don't want somebody to say, I'll just put my name at the bottom of it. It's fine. You know, you do all the sales. Oh, okay. Well, okay, fine. Put my name at the bottom of it then. It doesn't really make any difference. We could put a fake name there. So I think integrity is important. Perhaps we can do a whole episode on that. But I think you've got to sell yourself. And you've got to be true to yourself. Do the thing that you're good at the way you would like to be sold to. And if that doesn't work and your client doesn't like it, then that it perhaps is a better to kind of part ways as friends and say, look, I can't do it the way you want it. That's not my vibe. This is my vibe. Take it or leave it. I think I prefer to work like that. However, you know, I don't know if I come across as a bit of a dick to other people, but I don't care. I mean, it's you.
Yeah, I mean, invariably.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, but you're right. And what I would also add to that is, don't get me wrong, I don't want to sit in a white tower like going, oh, this is what we can do now, because people
ivory tower. I think you mean an ivory tower, not a white tower. You can sit in a white tower. It's the ivory tower. In my ivory tower, just painted. It's actually like made of mud and sticks. It's made of balsa wood.
It's not. It's virtually an ivory tower. It's not actually an ivory tower. But no, I think you should. I get told off for saying you should do this, because I would recommend that if you want to play the long game and get to a good place where you're happy as a copywriter and you can command big fees and all this kind of stuff, is that in a situation where you're struggling with the product you're writing for or with the client, you should try as much to be aware of the business side of it, that you've got to get some copy out or what have you, but try and recommend in a polite, nice way what would be better. How could you improve this product? How could you improve this view? How could you make better promises based on things? And explain why. You do have to do the work in the early days, definitely. Explain why that would be the case. And you will find invariably that some people will just ignore you and what have you. they're lost causes. Some people will steal your ideas and just run with them themselves, and that's just a moral outrage, and there's plenty of moral outrage. It's not new that we have this as copyright. But the good ones will go, hey, that's really interesting. Thank you very much. You've transformed our business. We're going to come back to you over and over and over again, and we're going to ask you to write more and more copy for us. We're going to ask your opinion on stuff, and you are going to be in a much better place where you are getting more money, you're getting more respect, you're going to be happier, you're going to be write better copy because your mental health's good, because you're like, I'm actually engaged in doing this. So again, this is a little bit kind of hairy-fairy, but like, or hairy-fairy, that's not a thing, is it?
Say it however you want, mate, it's fine. You're up there.
Hairy-fairy. I'm reclaiming hairy-fairy. But you've got to play the long game, because otherwise you will get to a place where your copy is going to be crap. It's going to be unspecific. You're going to be writing for bad products. You're going to get associated with that kind of stuff. So it is a case of, you can only learn your own way and what have you. But from my experience, and I think it's probably the same for you, Nick, you need to, as a copywriter, you're not just that person there hired to write the copy. You need to turn around and go, well, I'm struggling to write this copy because of these reasons, because the product's wrong, because this is there, because you're signing off whatever, because it doesn't actually fulfill what you're trying to say it does. And by just pushing back a little bit in a polite way, you will invariably improve the long-term game for you so much. And as I say, I can tell you from experience that's happened, and I'm sure you can say the same, Nick, but it seems hard. And as I say, you might be trying to get your first gig and what have you, but try and do that, and to be working towards that is one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give. As soon as you can, try and turn the relationship around so that you're not just the writer of words, you are an ideas person, and you are providing ideas to that business. You just happen to deliver them largely through the written word. But I feel like the writer, by asking that question about this piece of copy and this particular project, I would just say, yeah, if you're getting the money for it, great. But if you're feeling like it's not working right for you, it's going to show in your copy. We've been able to see, both coldly looking at this, that hasn't come through as good as I think this writer probably could do it. Because as I say, there is good writing here. There is a knowledge that's inherent in this copy, that they know how to persuade people, but it's not coming through. It's coming through as slightly muddled, slightly less than specific stuff. And I think that's not because of the copywriter's skill. I think it's because of they're not writing it as authentically as they could. So it solves itself in that way. So don't get me wrong, get paid, get the money, do that's cool. But you don't want to be down there in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time. You want to be writing really good stuff.
Well, I think we're talking about, I mean, we start just to sort of tie this episode on a little bow and maybe wrap up. And then I want to play a quick game with you, a copy related game, which will come to in a second. But, you know, the first thing you said was about authenticity of tone. Okay. And authenticity is really important. We talk about writing authentically to our reader, to our prospect, but we should, you know, endeavor to be authentic with our clients, our publishers, the businesses that we work for, honest and authentic, have an honest, authentic, open working relationship with them, and the staff at their businesses, whether that's their legal reps, their marketers. You know, we want to build good relationships with everybody, from our reader to the people whose work we sell, to the people who we work with, just because that will lead to a better career in general. So just don't forget that. And if you can't build that authentic relationship with somebody, you know, that you work with, then you need to work, is that me or is that them? And if it's them, probably sack it off and try and work with people. There's plenty of great people out there. Try and work with them. So let's wrap that up there. But Glenn, right, slight change of pace, because we're only looking at one piece of copy this week, or are we? I want to read an advert out that I read. Now this is published in a national magazine, so people will be able to go out and find it. It was published in the BBC History magazine, which I absolutely love, massive history buff. I'm going to read the body copy out to you, and I want you to put your hand up and tell me when you think you know what the product is. Okay?
Okay.
That's the game. Right, this is a real advert that went out. So it's in a history magazine, so there's an attempt been made to appeal to that audience. However, it begins. Since time immemorial, there's always been value in taking due care and attention before launching into any given endeavor. After all, history is littered with examples of monarchs, generals, explorers, architects, and more coming unstuck after leaving too many stones unturned. Can you guess what this is about?
Is that all you're giving me?
That's all I'm giving you. If you had to guess what this was about, what would you say?
Can I have it one more time?
Since time immemorial, there's always been value in taking due care and attention before launching into any given endeavor. After all, history is littered with examples of monarchs, generals, explorers, architects, and more coming unstuck after leaving too many stones unturned. I don't quite know what that phrase means. Too many stones unturned.
I've got too many stones unturned. In a history magazine, what could that mean? Christ, it could be anything. I'm assuming it's going to be silly, so I'm kind of trying to...
Not necessarily silly. It's quite a good product offering, I would say. In fact, it's critical.
I can't guess.
Well, the next line will tell you, but it could take such a strange story.
I mean, I would say what the hell? Like, I don't know, which is interesting.
But thanks to the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, the simple act of checking can help you keep your pensions and investments protected from any unforeseen financial mishaps. And then it goes on. The Leaning Tower of Pisa must surely be history's greatest lasting example of a failure to check details. Construction began in 1173, and it was doomed from the start, despite plans for the tower to be 56 meters tall, and foundations were initially only 3 meters deep. To add insult to injury...
Is it Experian?
It's the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. A great example of how, in my opinion, a very strangely thought out piece of advertising can find its way out into the market.
Did they do the same? Was that the same people who did the Terminator, the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing on the, his head on the little... Did you see these on TV?
They do
like weird...
They do strange adverts, very strange adverts. I mean, it's effectively a protection for your pensions and investments. But the whole thing is about the Leaning Tower of Pisa and architects and monarchs and explorers and all sorts of stuff. Anyway, I read it and I thought, I'm going to read that out on the fits, because I'm not necessarily saying whether that's good or bad. Actually, I am. I'm saying it's bad. But who am I to say that, one could say. But it does just show you that even adverts that run in the national press that have been presumably workshopped and checked by a lot of different people can still be utterly bizarrely not about the product that they're selling. And I think that's a point that's kind of worth coming back to again and again. If you have to get so far away from the product that you want to sell, although you've been paid to sell, that you're talking about architects and all sorts of other things, have you really done the homework and the hard yards of getting into your product? That's a really important product, by the way. It's protection for your investments and pensions. Critical, right? A really good scheme. So there's nothing wrong with the product at all. I hate stuff like that sells it short and attempts to be a bit twee, rather than to take your product seriously, because it performs a serious function that's really important for people's retirements and investments and other things. It kind of irks me when I see copy like that, and I thought, I'll read it out on the fix and play it.
It's indulgent, and there's, as you said, I think it comes down to that. It kind of the same theme that we kind of picked up in this episode is when you've got something good to sell, often selling it is very simple.
Yeah,
and you don't need to. Yes, there is the whole washing machine thing. I can't remember, Claude Hopkins or Eugene Schwartz thing of like, people are aware of it, so you can't just say, wow, look at this box that cleans all my stuff. You need to come away with more interesting things, because awareness is higher. But for the FC, I can't remember what the financial services.
FSCS.
Yeah. No, like, you don't need to do that kind of work. There should be a better way. And I think we won't go too far, but I think it's a problem with advertising generally. And it shows because people are now so uber aware of advertising that it's like, even the other day I saw the Facebook Meta story, and they're like trying to tag other companies going, oh, what's KFC going to be like in the meta world and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, oh, just shut up. Like, stop being inauthentic about this stuff. It's obvious you're just trying to sell me and do these things. And people are aware of that. So we're getting a bit lofty, but like, good salesmanship will find out what's good about something, and the purely stating it will be shocking and interesting, and you need to find out what the thing that shocks and interests people is from the thing in itself, as close as you can. The further you get removed, the more inauthentic and the sillier and what have you it will get. There'll be times that you need to kind of go a few steps away, but yeah, that's just an example where it's someone's gone indulgent, and I don't know. I don't know why that stuff gets created, because it doesn't even work on the committee level, where
No.
the idea that people have just all gone, yeah, can we actually add that bit about Pisa being in 1580, because without 1580 it's not accurate. It's like, what the fuck?
Anyway, I suppose we should. It's somewhat indiscreet to critique other people's copy. However, it's all out there. People are welcome to look at copy that we've written and tell us how it could be improved. If anybody should have the time or the inclination to do so. Let's wrap it up there. I apologise for this episode being slightly late, just various things getting in the way. You can write to us at feedback@longcopymasterclass.com to submit your work, whatever that might be. Get in touch with feedback, thoughts, ideas, anything you want us to talk about on the show, we will talk about. Thank you very much for joining me today, Glenn, and we'll see everybody again next week, Monday or Tuesday it should be. So cheers everybody, and goodbye.
See you soon.
And there we have it. We hope you got something valuable out of today's episode of The Fix.
Maybe it sparked an idea or two for your next writing project. Maybe it triggered a new headline, opening line, or story to tell your reader.
Maybe it inspired you to scrap what you have and start over. Or maybe it made you want to submit your current work in progress for a little constructive feedback.
If that's the case, then please send it to us at feedback@longcopymasterclass.com.
Or if you don't want us to review a specific piece of writing, send us a problem you're trying to solve,
or a challenge you want input on, and we'll do our best to help.
And remember, if you like The Fix, please do share it with other writers, business owners, and marketers.